Good afternoon or evening and welcome. Our Living has 8 unique communities, 5 located in Virginia, Maryland, and New York, and 3 sister communities located in hot California. Kensington is truly privileged to support care partners and professionals from coast to coast. Kensington focuses on relationship-based care, care built on the foundation of our promise to love and care for your family as we do our own. It is programs such as the one you are attending now that are so important for those of us walking through a caregiving journey to hear from expert professionals on keeping us current with the latest advances in care, management, and treatment of conditions that affect seniors and their families. I was first introduced to Kensington 10 years ago as my father, who had Alzheimer's, was a resident for over 7 years. Everyone that registered for today's event will receive a copy of the webinar to share with friends and family. Please also know to utilize the Q&A function to submit questions for our panel. Today is for you. Please use this opportunity to ask any questions. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sarah Kremen. I have had the pleasure of producing educational events with Dr. Kremen for years, and her knowledge and passion continues to impress me. Thank you for joining us, and please share with the audience a few words about yourself.
Thanks so much, Susan, for this opportunity to speak. As she said, I have been doing this for a long time with her now, since before COVID, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm a behavioral neurologist at Cedars-Sinai. I'm the director of the behavioral neurology program, where I see patients who have memory and language and other cognitive concerns. I also train fellows to learn how to do what I do, so that we can have more providers out in the community to take care of people. And also I participate in research as leading various clinical trials and observational studies. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and share my screen. So I'm going to be giving a little bit of an update, and per Susan's request, I'm going to be talking about a couple different topics, but they all tie into each other fairly smoothly. So we'll begin. The first thing is talking about advances in diagnosis and detection of Alzheimer's disease. For a long time, it's been that we couldn't really tell anything until somebody had died and passed away. And if somebody agreed to get an autopsy, we could look under the microscope at somebody's brain and be able to look and see the proteins of Alzheimer's disease, which are amyloid and tau. Over the years, we now have ways that we can detect amyloid in the spinal fluid and in the brain. So we now can do spinal taps and look at amyloid and tau under the by sending it away in spinal fluid. And we can also do PET scans, which are similar to MRIs, where we can actually look at amyloid levels in the brain. But the newest thing that some of you may have heard about is being able to diagnose Alzheimer's disease in the blood. There are now several tests that have been out, and the first one that was actually approved by the FDA, which happened about last May. And so this is really exciting because we've been using these in clinical trials and other research for a while now, and now they are starting to come into the clinic. There are various tests, but the ones that have been out mostly for the longest time are Precivity AD2, as well as another one by Quest. So I don't want to confuse people and get too much in the weeds, but one of the things that we've been able to detect is various types of tau. That's TAU, and again, it's one of the markers that we see in people's brains that have Alzheimer's disease. And tau is very important because it is associated with the memory problems and behavioral changes that we see when people have Alzheimer's disease. On the left-hand side, what you can see is people who have Alzheimer's disease in the gray and all those dots in gray. And then we have people who did not have Alzheimer's disease in yellow. And they followed people and measured something called phospho-tau 217. It's just one type of tau protein that's associated with Alzheimer's disease. And it turns out that we can distinguish by blood test fairly well between people who have this protein and who don't have this protein. As you can see very clearly, there's a distinction. And it's pretty sensitive. That's what the curves on the right-hand side are showing, but I'm not going to dive into that, just to say that it has a pretty good sensitivity. So at the moment, we're not here now, but this is something that we envision at some point in the future where people may be coming into clinic. Some of people concern, other people will have that concern, and there may be something going on. And we may be able to actually get a sample of blood, and then we will be able to stratify people by low, mediate, and high probability that they may have Alzheimer's disease. So maybe by this blood test, if somebody had low probability, it doesn't look like Alzheimer's disease, we may do a workup for other types of cognitive difficulties and may diagnose people with things like obstructive sleep apnea or anxiety or depression or thyroid problems or something else like that, but it wouldn't be due to Alzheimer's disease. There may be people who come in with intermediate probability, in which case we may have to do another test, maybe a PET scan to try to look and see whether the amyloid PET scan, which is the other protein we see in Alzheimer's disease, we see if that amyloid is positive on the brain, or do a spinal fluid sample. And then there will be some people where that level in the blood test will be definitely high, and we will be able to make a diagnosis and then immediately be able to send people off for treatment. Again, we are not at this point yet. This is probably several years off, but it's something that we see coming in the future. Right now, again, we do have some blood-based biomarkers that we can use to detect Alzheimer's disease, not only by p-tau217, but also looking at amyloid, the other protein associated with Alzheimer's disease. But we have some practice guidelines that are very important. The first thing is that it is not appropriate to get this test if you're just worried, but you really have no cognitive concerns at all. If somebody is testing, and that's what this detection of amyloid in patients with objective cognitive impairment, that means that somebody on a test objectively has a decline that has been noted by a clinician, whether that's a nurse practitioner or a physician or a PA, but it means that somebody has come into clinic, they voice a concern, we can see objectively on a test that they have had a decline, and that we've done an appropriate workup otherwise to look for reasons why they may have cognitive impairment. So this is not used for screening. This is not for looking for people who are at risk but don't have any cognitive impairment. Though there is a tendency for people to want to use it that way, that's not how it's used. So you have to have cognitive complaint and a cognitive objective drop in cognition. As I mentioned, it's still very early days with blood tests. There's a lot of variability still across the different types of tests there are. Many of the commercially available tests do not meet our clinical practice guideline thresholds, and that means that they have to meet a certain level of specificity and sensitivity to meet the criteria, and a lot of them don't do that yet. And the other thing is we're really still learning what a positive test means. For example, these tests, because they are in the blood, they're a little bit more whimsical, a little bit, we don't know, they can be affected by things. For example, if you have poor kidney function, we know that the level of phospho-tau217 goes up. So it may be falsely elevated and indicate that somebody has Alzheimer's disease when they don't. So we're still trying to figure out how that works. The other thing is really understanding what is the role that blood tests should play in part of the whole evaluation for memory concerns. What these should not be is a replacement of the real evaluation that needs to go on with a healthcare professional. So it's really important that that conversation still happens, that somebody goes to their doctor and says, I'm concerned about my memory, and that they get a workup that includes questions about what they're having difficulty with, where there is appropriate testing done with, looking at a memory test and other types of tests, getting a brain scan, and if necessary, doing other types of tests for blood tests to really try to understand what's going on with somebody. And this would just be part of the puzzle to support getting a diagnosis. This is not, a standalone type of test. Now, the next part of my talk really talks about the stages of Alzheimer's disease, where these blood tests and other things fit in and about trying to understand why we need to detect Alzheimer's disease earlier. So this is a very classic curve that people in the Alzheimer's community are very familiar with, which was originally designed by a researcher whose last name is Clifford Jack. And everybody has now used this as sort of a way to understand how things happen in Alzheimer's disease. So very early on during this period of when people are cognitively normal, amyloid is building up. And this happens probably over 15 to 20 years. And it's silent. There's no cognitive decline occurring during this time. At some point, however, this buildup of amyloid in the brain is really not so good. We think that amyloid probably has, at the beginning, it has a preventive or protective function. It's probably trying to wall off things from your brain, like viruses and other things. But at some point, the brain does not clear that amyloid the way it should. There's too much amyloid. And so now it becomes pro-inflammatory, and the brain is not happy with that. What happens is that then signals and kicks off the other protein you see in Alzheimer's disease, which is tau. Tau is actually in the neurons of the cells, and the neurons of the brain, and these are the cells that help our brain think. What happens is tau is very helpful for keeping the neurons skeletal function, and when the tau starts to misfold, then the skeleton of the neurons starts to decline and the neurons don't function as well. And that's where we see people starting to have cognitive and behavioral changes. So amyloid starts first and eventually kicks off tau. And by the time somebody is coming in for a cognitive concern, a lot of time has passed biologically. We see that shrinkage of the brain, that's what atrophy means, starts to happen. And people start to come into our clinic saying that they have memory concerns. If we detect that they have memory concerns, but they don't have a functional loss, so they're still taking care of their bills, their medications, they're meeting all their appointments and doing everything they should be okay, then that's called mild cognitive impairment. But this process, this biological process keeps going, and eventually, if untreated, people then inevitably develop dementia. And that's where people not only have a cognitive decline, but they have a functional decline. The goal of clinical trials and really trying to intervene early is that we have a lot of opportunity here in the 15 to 20 years of buildup before people come in to tell us, hey, I think there's something wrong with my memory. And not only is this an opportunity to try to get into clinical trials and for us to really try to figure out how can we catch this before it gets worse, but even now with amyloid testing, we have an opportunity to catch people even sooner. And so we have this ability with amyloid PET imaging. So this is a scan, and I'm going to show you what these scans look like. This is what a normal amyloid scan looks like with somebody who has very low amyloid. So maybe this person actually has a reading that is actually negative. We have the scale called centiloids that goes from 0 to over 100. And this measures the amyloid. And as we go from bottom to top, there's more and more amyloid. And what you can see here is as we go up, not only is this amyloid positive, but you'll see the tau at some point becomes positive as well. And all of these different levels are linked to whether we see no amyloid at all, no matter whether we see it on a scan like this or in the blood or spinal fluid, or if we were to look at that brain under a microscope. But as these levels increase, for example, at this level of 24 to 30, this is where we can actually see the read on, we can see these changes where this is becoming fuzzier and this is fuzzier still. This tells us there's amyloid on the PET scan, and we could probably detect it in spinal fluid and probably in the blood. Not only that, at this level, if we were to look at the brain under the microscope, we could see amyloid at this level, but not yet the tau spreading. If we get to this amyloid level of 40 to 50, not only can we see everything on the scan and in fluid, but now we can see the amyloid in the brain, but also we now start to see tau spreading. So as you can see, there's an opportunity to try to intervene earlier before a lot of these different changes tend to happen. So the question really is then, why wait to get your memory evaluated? And of course, this is a very scary thing when people are thinking maybe there's something wrong. I'm not doing things as well. That's, I don't want anybody to know. It's a really frightening thing. But the thing is that getting a diagnosis and getting checked for whether you have Alzheimer's or anything else, maybe it's just sleep apnea, but we need to know because that offers you support. It helps to develop a plan that your family and you can create for your future care. It opens the door to possible new therapies and to clinical trials. And it's really a way to take advantage of a window of opportunity. So there's really not a reason to wait. There are new medications that are out there now. This is lecanemab that was approved in July of 2023. And we also have donanemab, which I'll also show, which was approved in 2024. These medications are targeted at clearing the amyloid out of the brain. So as you can see here, these are people in the black line who were randomized to get placebo. So that's just an infusion of saline. And people who were randomized to get the drug lecanemab in green. This is time over months. And this is the level of amyloid on the y-axis. And what you can see is that over time, the placebo had a little bit of increased, but the lecanemab arm, they had a significant decrease starting at 3 months in the level of their amyloid in their brain. This is seen on the right-hand side pictorially. These are actually amyloid PET scans. You can see on the top is placebo. The bottom is the people who got the drug. The top row of each of these boxes shows people before they started. This was right at the beginning of the study. And then you can see the bottom row is people who finished the study. Over time, the people who had placebo, they increased over time in this green and yellow, which indicates they were gaining amyloid. The people who got lecanemab, you can see actually it went the other way and they got blue and purple. So this is clearance of amyloid. So we know that they're able to clear it. But, does that mean anything if you can't slow down? What does that mean from a cognitive or functional point? So the end point for these studies was something called the CDR sum of boxes, which really is just a very official test that looks not only at cognition, but function. Because what good is a test if it doesn't slow down, or what good is a drug if it can't slow down cognition decline or functional decline? So what you can see here is that the people who got the drug in the green did have a slowing that was significant compared to the people that were in the black line placebo who got the placebo arm. Now, it's a small difference. It's a very small difference. These people declined by 1.2 points, and these people by 1.6. There's only about a 1.4 difference, a 0.4 difference here. It's very subtle, but it is statistically significant. Same thing in terms of slowing down the rate of decline of loss of function. Again, you can see there was a 37% slowing. Here it's a 27% slowing. The actual difference on a score, absolute score, is not that big, but it is statistically significant. The other thing is that they now have enough data on lecanemab out to 36 weeks. And this is the green. This is, again, the people who got the drug. There's the people in black who did not get the drug. And they compared it to an observational study called ADNI, which has been out for probably 25 years, where it's just observational. They're just following people over time as people go through stages of dementia. And basically what they show here is that if people were in ADNI and had never gotten the drug at all, the people who did get the drug, there was a 30% reduction in their progression and worsening. So these medications are doing something. In the sake of time, I'm going to skip this, but there is a positive downstream effect on reversing elevation in tau. It seems to positively affect tau, to have lower tau. Donanemab is another medication. It's an infusion as well, just like lecanemab. And again, they had a different outcome measure for cognition. But again, the point is that you see that the people who got the drug very quickly start to separate from the people who don't get the drug. And there is a slowing in the rate of decline on cognition. And that occurred even after they stopped the drug, when people actually, when they checked every 6 months and looked at their amyloid scan and it turned from positive to negative, they took people off the drug, put them into placebo, and they still saw that there was a beneficial effect. So this medication definitely helps. There's We know that also if people have more tau in their brain, that people who have less tau benefit more. And we know that people who are earlier in the stage of the progression, so if they have mild cognitive impairment instead of dementia, they will have more benefits. So 60% slowing in cognitive decline. And so that or do this earlier rather than later. So in the last couple of minutes, I just wanted to talk about something completely different. And I see that even though I had fixed these slides, they seem to be a little bit messed up. So I apologize for that. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the findings from the US Pointer study, which is not a clinical trial in a sense of having a medication. This was actually a lifestyle study that was funded by the Alzheimer's Association, where they enrolled a large number of people. This is 2,111 people that they randomized to get two different types of guidance on what to do in terms of physical exercise, cognitive exercise, nutrition, and health monitoring. And these people were ages at 60 to 79 years old with a sedentary lifestyle. So people who weren't really exercising, who may not have had the greatest diet, and maybe had at least two other cognitive declines and risk factors, but none of them had dementia. And this was done across the country. Some people received very structured guidance where people met quite frequently. They had groups that met, and this actually launched while it was a COVID, so they had to quickly go to virtual online, but they met regularly and talked about physical education, learning different types of ways that they could do exercise, cognitive activities, healthy diet. People were checking in with them regularly with navigators, and people would help intervene. Um, and then there was another group that had 6 peer team meetings. They met like 6 times, but they were sort of just given guidance and people did it on their own. But they were given available educational materials and they were encouraged to engage in good lifestyle management. The bottom line is that both groups benefited. So no matter what, making these changes is very important. However, what's really important that they found is that if you do structured activities, that these people actually experienced a slowing down of the cognitive aging clock by 1 or 2 years, which is really quite incredible. Now, it was a small change. Again, all these things we're talking about are small changes, but we feel that they're important because we know that if we take all the little pieces and try to put things together, this is the start of a pathway of trying to slow down cognitive decline. So this is what they put together as the US Pointer Brain Health Recipe, where they put together recommendations. So 30 to 35 minutes of moderate to intense aerobic activity 4 times a week, plus strength and flexibility exercises twice a week, cognitive exercise, and they used Brain HQ or Healthy Brain HQ. So these are computerized based brain tests or that you can do training on for 30 minutes 3 times a week. But really the message is engage in activities that use your brain socially and cognitively. Nutrition wise, there's really no magic diet, but adherence to the MIND diet is something that all of us really recommend because it is a Mediterranean diet that emphasizes omega-3 fatty acids and other antioxidants. And lastly, doing health monitoring. So regularly checking in with your doctor for regular blood pressure, weight checks, and lab results to make sure you don't have diabetes and other things. So with that, that's the end of my portion, and I'm going to stop sharing for now.
Um, thank you, first of all, so much. But I'm so glad you brought up the US Pointer study. Um, if the audience takes anything away today, this is huge because it really links scientific evidence with lifestyle. It's the first time that that's ever happened to really prove it. And Dr. Krim and I did an event with Dan Gibbs, who's a neurologist who diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he absolutely says that increasing his exercise, his diet, social engagement has absolutely deterred her. I mean, has helped his progression. So I'm so thankful for that. And I have another question that came in. Um, Disease to functional and that decline. And then you talked about it really starts with amyloid and it goes to tau. What is that time progression? Does it vary with individuals or is it pretty similar?
Right. So that brings up a really nice point. As you saw with that, the curves, we know that this is happening. The amyloid is probably percolating for a long time. However, there is individual variability. So we know for some people this could go for 20, 25 years, some of it silent, of course, but then, it eventually emerges. But there are for some people that it can be very quick. There does seem to be a correlation with people who get early onset Alzheimer's disease,
Mm,
and that means young onset, meaning under the age of 65. Unfortunately, it seems like it goes faster for them. Now, there is a small percentage of those people, and I want to say like less than 1%, maybe 1% of people who have autosomal dominant Alzheimer's disease. Like it runs in their family, and every generation is getting it in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s.
mm,
That's not most people. That does go fast for them. But then there's another subset of younger people who do get it under the age of 65 when there's not really a clear genetic risk, except maybe they have one risk gene, an ApoE4 gene, which increases their risk, but it tends to go faster for younger people. We don't know exactly why. That's actually one of the things at Cedars that we're very interested in is the aging biology of Alzheimer's disease and trying to understand why do some people experience it quickly and others don't. So the range is like from 2 to 20 years, but 2 is very quick and not the norm.
And then with the treatments, with the infusion treatments, lecanemab, donanemab, is the reason it's so important to tell the audience for early detection in MCI because those are targeting amyloid, and you really want to get in there before the tau comes in after?
Yeah. I mean, that's really it. And I think, right now, so the medications are approved for mild cognitive impairment and mild dementia. They're not approved for moderate and severe. We already know that later stages of dementia, these drugs just won't make a dent. The earlier you go, the better off and more successful the medication will probably be. And so, as you saw, as I showed that graph, where we know there are certain times or estimates where we think the brain is just has amyloid, and then when it starts to accumulate tau. So, the ideal time would be to try to get it when there's just amyloid, right, and no tau. So, yes, that's why, earlier is better and younger is better. That's sort of, and tau burden, lower tau burden is better. Unfortunately, we don't have a great way right now to check for the tau level. There is an FDA PET scan that's approved, but Medicare doesn't cover it, so we don't order it because it's super
Very
expensive.
expensive.
Yeah,
We've gotten a couple questions about genetic risk for
yeah,
Alzheimer's. And I know you said that don't go in and get a blood test that needs to be done by your doctor. You don't go to Quest Diagnostics and just say, I want a blood test for the
right.
biomarkers. But someone's asking that they have a lot of Alzheimer's in their family. Should they just go get a PET scan?
No. Yeah, that's really, so this is a thing. We don't, at this point in time, know what to do with somebody who has no cognitive complaint and otherwise no reason to go to the doctor and with an amyloid PET scan. There's no treatment for that. There is none. Now, there is a clinical trial going on right now. It's called the AHEAD study. It's the A345 study. It's closed to enrollment, but they have, I don't know, probably 3,000 people right now enrolled in a study who are just like this, who are at risk because they have amyloid in their brain, but there was no reason for them to go to the doctor because they don't have a memory concern. And they have two tiers: people who have like a centiloid level of 40 and above, and people who have, say, a centiloid level of 24 to 40, right? So different levels of amyloid in their brain. And they are giving people, they're randomized to get lecanemab or a placebo. And they're being followed for like 4 years because that's how long it takes to even see a tiny cognitive signal because people don't have a memory problem at all. And so it's really hard to find if they're having any cognitive concerns because they're healthy. But what we're trying to understand from that study is if you pull amyloid out of the brain when somebody doesn't even have a cognitive problem, does that help downstream prevent cognitive issues? We don't know the answer. So, right now, if you have a family history, but you're not experiencing any memory problems, there is no reason to get an amyloid scan. There is no reason to get a blood based biomarker. They are not approved for that. People are interested in knowing their, I think I got hung up. Did I freeze or am I okay?
You're okay now. You're
Okay.
okay now. But and there's a lot of questions also coming in about, how do you diagnose MCI? And
Right.
I would assume that that's done with, can that be done with a primary?
So we are hoping that primary care physicians more and more will take this on. The definition again of MCI really is you have a cognitive concern. We see something on a test that objectively shows that you're having problems, but functionally you're still okay. So when we ask you questions, can you do your, do your finances, your medications, et cetera, you're still doing okay. Even if it's a little harder, you're able to do them. This could potentially be done in a primary care doctor's office. We are hoping to educate people more because, as you can understand, as we get more tests and more drugs over time, we as specialists will not be able to take care and screen everybody. So we really do need the primary care doctors to take this on, just like they take care of hypothyroidism and depression and sleep apnea.
Hmm. And I will just advise everybody with my progression with my dad with Alzheimer's. I had a notepad that was designated to my dad because when I saw different behavior things, when I noticed something different, I could go into the doctor and just give them a laundry list of what we were experiencing, which was very helpful. And then questions about somebody would like to know, Justin would like to know more about sleep apnea and why is
Oh,
it
yeah.
such a risk factor?
Yeah. So sleep apnea in general, what happens at night if you have sleep apnea is that you deoxygenate. So, you're getting less oxygen to your brain, which is not good. And it's been associated with heart failure and it's associated with lung failure and it also causes memory problems.
Stroke.
So, there's a whole bunch of reasons why we want you to get evaluated. But the thing is, in our sense, from the neurology point of view, when people come in with memory problems, maybe it's just sleep apnea. Like, wouldn't it be better that it's a reversible cause and it's not Alzheimer's or some other neurodegenerative disease? So that's why we screen for it because it can cause memory problems. So, but it also causes heart failure. So you do really want to talk to your primary care doctor about getting screened.
And here's the big question that we all want to know. Menopause and height. Sorry. Yeah, I knew it was going to come in and HRT and
Yeah.
hormonal changes. And I'll let you go ahead and take a stab at that. The jury.
Oh, boy. I know. So it's a great question. And let's put it this way. So there's a lot of things we know and a lot of things we don't know. There are a lot of estrogen receptors throughout the brain. We know that having a very quick, decline in estrogen, which, we have this, fluctuation and then decline of estrogen around menopause, does throw the brain for a loop. I think everybody knows that. The question is, of course, long time ago there was the women's health state study, which showed that it was harmful to take HRT. We probably think that how that analysis was done, it's not quite right in terms of that, but it looked like people who were who had diabetes and other things, they did a lot worse. I think where we stand now is that there is a rationale for why HRT might be helpful, but we still don't have the answer. And it may be that it's going to be just around perimenopause, that that's the best time and the most important time, but we don't have a great answer for it yet. But there's research being done.
The
That's
jury's out and the jury is out, but the
yeah,
jury did conclude that it's not so bad for you
right,
that
as we
we
thought.
originally thought.
Right.
So I'm
Yeah.
I'm a fan. Just
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard. And these conversations happen all the time. And people right now just basically have to talk to their neurologist and their gynecologist and their primary care doctor and then just make an individual decision. But there's no blanket answer right now.
so here's another big one. Lithium.
No. Okay.
Sorry. That's the last one, and then we're going to have
No,
Veronica.
we're so good. Okay, so here's the story with lithium. So I know that that article that came out made a huge splash, but we need to put it into context. So it was lithium orotate, not lithium calcinate or whatever else we have that, is in lithium that we've historically treated people with bipolar disorder. Okay. So it was in mice, and that is a big, huge caveat because mice don't naturally get Alzheimer's disease. We have to make them get Alzheimer's disease. So it was looking great in the mice, good for the mice. But what this needs to do is now get moved into human studies. So until we have human studies, we really don't know much about lithium. And what I can tell you from otherwise, people who have bipolar disorder, we try not to put them on lithium unless we need to because it can cause thyroid problems, it can cause a tremor, it can cause a lot of things. So to take lithium without having is a little bit premature. So we were a little bit frustrated at how much of a splash that made, not because we're not excited about science. We totally are, and we need the research to keep going. It's just that the way it then gets perceived through the media is that this is like, this is it. This is the next thing. And really, there needed to be a little bit more context. So,
So the jury's out. So
yeah.
jury's out on those two. With no further ado, please stay with us,
Mhm.
Dr. Kremen. But Victoria, Veronica, can you please join us? I'm so excited to have Veronica join us. I've done events with her in the past, and I will tell you, I know the term village or whatever it is overused, but there's an average of 5 care partners, caregivers for everyone diagnosed with these horrible dementia diseases. And Veronica is going to take us through that journey and help us with the care partners. Thank you, Veronica.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Dr. Kremen. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica. I'm the social worker for the Goldrich Center. I get to support Dr. Kremen and all the other wonderful providers, just help navigate this journey with the families. Let me just start sharing my slide. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about kind of how to plan for the future. And this map, this path could really work at any stage. The symptoms, the beginning of it, the middle, the end. And it's something that you kind of want to go keep coming back to because it could change. Like any road trip, there'll be hiccups, there might be detours. You just kind of want to go and try to control what you can control, but then plan what you could plan. So our first stop is building your support team. Kind of how Susan shared, it really does take a village. And this support team should be also for you, the caregiver. You want to identify people that you feel comfortable with, people that you can go to for help. It could look like family members, close friends, neighbors you trust, spiritual leaders, members of your faith or spirituality, professional case managers, care managers, and your medical providers. You want to be able to set yourself up for success. In our support group, we often share this is a marathon, not a sprint. So you want to be able to know how you're going to fuel up, when you might need to fuel up, and what steps are needed. You just want to make this journey sustainable. The first stop I always recommend is legal planning. You want to gather your forms ready. This is something that you want to have in place before you even need. Unfortunately, a lot of times at the clinic, we'll get families that have an established power of attorney and their loved one maybe aren't able to understand what they're signing, so then they can't even get it done. They have to go the conservatorship route. So we always recommend family try to get it done as early as possible. You can always revisit the subject. You can always change it if needed. But you want to just kind of start with consulting with an elder law attorney, maybe getting a living will in place. And it's very state specific. A lot of times, too, families will start off in California and then move to Georgia. I just had a family move to Georgia to be closer to the daughter, but now they have to redo everything. So just kind of want to assess, well, we might move out of state, what are we looking at, and kind of going from there. But you do want to have your power of attorney set in place as early as you can. The earlier, the better. And these are hard subjects. A lot of times families don't want to talk about it. It's difficult to talk about it. Maybe your loved one might not think they have to do it. I don't need it. So we try to, with a point of, why don't you all do it together? Again, everyone should kind of have this in place. Everyone on this call, all of the Kensington staff should have a power of attorney ready in place, a healthcare directive. I should have one. So it's something that you want to have it all together. So we've seen that sometimes a little bit more well received if the family goes together. Like, okay, we're all gonna go, we're all gonna fill out these power of attorneys or advanced healthcare directive. So that way your loved one won't be singled out and it might be a little bit more well received. And it kind of takes away the stigma of it. You know, these are hard conversations, but they're so needed, and it could just make part of the journey easier once they're done in place. The next stop, I would recommend financial planning. Meet with a financial planner if you have one, assign a power of attorney for finances. And this will be fluid depending on the stage that your loved one's in. You might not need to have all these alerts or interventions in place, but you want to know they exist. So maybe in the beginning, it's just, getting the power of attorney signed completed. But then as they're progressing, you kind of feel like, okay, there's a lot of spending happening. Maybe they went to the bank. They don't remember going to the bank. There was a big withdrawal. So maybe you can set up, alarms for the bank, alerts, limits, different credit cards. You just want to know what's available to you and your loved one, assigning beneficiaries, trying to avoid scams as much as you can, setting up monthly payments so you don't have to worry about missed payments. Again, it's very fluid, so the path will change as your loved one progresses, but you just want to know what's out there to help protect you and your loved one and the finances. Like any road trip, we need to fuel up, right? So community support will be your best version of fuel. It's a great way to kind of get to know what's around you, what's involved in the community, what's there to support you. A good starting point is asking your clinic, do they have a social worker? Do they have a care manager? A lot of times I meet with families and they're like, I don't know what I should be asking, what is out there. And I could tell them, like, there's local nonprofits or national nonprofits. Are you looking for individual therapy, support groups? There's support out there, it's just hard to find it. So a good starting point could be asking if there's a social worker on the team and then kind of going from there. Individual therapy is a good point too, because this is your journey too. You're also changing. You see your loved one changing, your home is changing, and it's nice to have a safe space to process that. Support groups are a great way to get information from people, a great way to get tips. In the support group I facilitate, I learned so much from the caregivers. They bring in great ideas, great things that I didn't know about existed. So that way it's a form to just kind of learn from one another and support each other as you're all going through this journey. And then we share support groups kind of like dating. Maybe you went to one and you didn't like it, and that's okay. It doesn't mean support groups, are not for you. It just means that group wasn't the one for you. Try different ones. There's some that are very specific to language, ethnicities, relationships to your loved one, certain types of dementia. Just kind of like don't say no group. Sometimes we do have to go through some frogs to find our parents or whatnot, but you want to be able to know, like, okay, what support is out there for me. Education. Attending talks like today is a great start too. Learn about symptoms, diagnosis, what's out there, stages, what to expect. You want to learn about research opportunities, clinical trials available, and also, you don't want to overwhelm yourself, but you want to think of next steps. I tell the families, let's look at the roadmap, let's think about what's coming next, but then let's go back to the bridge in front of us because it could change. So you just kind of want to be alert to things, but you also don't want to be caught off guard. So if something happens and you're like, oh, I remember someone in the support group mentioned this happened to them, let me try what they shared. You will feel a little bit more in control of this situation that's so difficult. Respite is my favorite thing. This will also be another spectrum. It could look so different for everyone. It's either asking your friends for support, family members, maybe you're looking at adult day programs, maybe you're thinking about in-home care. There's nonprofits that provide caregiver respite grants where they send a caregiver to the home. There's also a national Medicare pilot program that's providing respite right now called Guide. You want to look into that, see if that's something that you qualify for. Maybe the Medicaid program, Medi-Cal in California, might offer some respite in home care. You want to identify the self-care you have and you want to schedule it in. It's important to take a break. It's important to take a step back to see, okay, what do I need for myself? So that way you can then see what you need for your loved one. I love this picture because we talk about this a lot, where You get your diagnosis, and a lot of times the caregivers will be like, okay, I should know better. I shouldn't have done that. I should have done this. And it's like, no, you're still human. You're still gonna get upset at upsetting behaviors. You're still allowed to get mad. Like they did something that hurt your feelings, you're still allowed to respond. It doesn't mean because now that you're a dementia caregiver, you have no feelings, no reactions, because you're not a robot. So it's learning to be like, okay, how do I control my emotion to take care of my loved one, but still be, true to me and be able to care for myself as well. Because I would say you're still human. It's okay. And then like any good car road trip, we need a tune-up. That just means how do we know if something has to change? Where can more support be added? And where do we add it? A lot of times families will ask me, how do I know it's time to bring in care to the home? How do I know I should think about an assisted living facility? How do I know I need to move? And it's different for everybody. So I always tell families, how will you know? A lot of times families want to have, if I'm crying myself, to sleep every day, if someone falls, you just kind of want to set it up in your head about how do I know I need to revisit this? A car is easy. A little light turns on. We know, check engine, low on gas. We know what's needed. But this is hard. So you want to be able to know, okay, if I have back pain and it's starting to hurt a lot, I need to do something different because I can't keep going the way I'm going. I need to add more support for myself to then be able to take care of my loved one. So you just kind of want to know without judgment what that would look like for you. Because again, it's going to be so different for everybody. And you wouldn't let your phone battery die, so you wouldn't do it to yourself. This is your loved one's journey, but it's also your journey. And it's important to kind of make sure you're safe, not even just physically, but also emotionally. And I know it's a lot easier said than done, but there's always going to be something else to do. It's going to have an appointment for your loved one. You're always going to have a task for your loved one. So it's so important to schedule your self-care. The way, on this road trip when you got to stop for gas. Look at it like that. Like, okay, I need to make sure I fuel myself up because then I'm the best version of myself to be a good version for my loved one.
I love
Mm.
that you said that because you know what? Everyone's refueling is different.
Yeah.
Every individual needs something different. And I want to, first of all, what you talked about, the legal thing, I can't emphasize, I'm sure Dr. Kremen would agree, how important it is to get that duck in a row right away.
Yeah.
And I loved your advice because that was a really difficult thing with my family because my dad was against it. I don't need the help. He's in
Mm.
complete denial. And so we all did it together. I said,
Yeah.
I need it. Everybody needs it. And in fact, that is actually very true. But I also would love Dr. Kremen's thoughts on this too. I loved what you said about support groups and you're interviewing them. And the first one isn't going to be perfect, but don't give up. And I'd like to ask both of you, are there support groups for both the caregiver and the patient together? Are there support groups for just the patient with people that are experiencing this disease progression?
I know there is Memory Cafe International, and those are for both care partners and the person going through the journey. And then also some nonprofit like Alzheimer's Los Angeles here in LA have support groups for both at the same time. So they're in the same group together.
Actually, Kensington just started offering, it's called the K Club for disease progression, but also the memory cafes for both of them because I think it's so important that together we're on this journey. And then um, the last question here is, well, two comments. One is I'm so excited Medicare is offering guide. I had not heard about that. And, I've always been directing people to We Are HFC. I'm glad you recognize them. But you apply for grants for respite care, but I can't tell you enough. And the Medicare guide, I'm just thrilled about that. But maybe both of you could touch on one word now. Sarah, Dr. Kremen's going to get mad at me again about menopause and lithium. How guilt. Can you talk a little bit about guilt? from the
Yeah,
caregiver, and how do we navigate that word?
yeah. Guilt is hard and it's a lot easier said than done, but a lot of it is like self-reflection and what's coming in for up for us. And I always tell the caregivers, you had a relationship with this person before you became a caregiver. You were a spouse, you were an adult child, you were a friend, and then now you're a caregiver. So anything that was happening beforehand, it's gonna just be more. So you want to just check in with yourself. Remind yourself that you're trying your best. This is everyone's first time going through this journey with this person. So we're all just trying our best, and your best will look different every day. And a lot of times, guilt is just because we're not used to it. I hear a lot. I felt selfish going to the movies. I should be at home with them. They're not at the movies. Or, I should be playing the game with them. I shouldn't be at this book club. But it's knowing that, like, okay, well, if you don't go take care of yourself and then you get frustrated because you're still human, you're still allowed to get frustrated, you're going to be upset. You might snap back. You might say something that you feel like, oh, I shouldn't have said it that way. And now you feel guilty. And then that cycle continues because you should have known better. But it's knowing that the goal shouldn't be to not react. It should be like, okay, I feel very tapped out already. I'm running on empty. I need to do something for me because I know that once they come back, I'll be more refreshed and I'll have more space. I'll have more patience. But
Anything
again,
to add, Dr. Kremen?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the biggest thing to remember, and I think we as physicians, when we're training or nurse practitioners, like we learn this, like when we're on call and we're on call for a 27 or 24-hour shift and we're getting called and like we're the only neurologist in the hospital and we're running around because there's stroke codes and there's this and there's that. We have to stop at some point, even when the pager is going off and it's like we've got to be everywhere, because if we haven't eaten and we haven't gone to the bathroom, I don't know if we'll get sleep, but like you have to take care of yourself. If you do not take care of yourself, you are not really helpful to anybody else. And so in this case, obviously you guys you're on call. It's like permacall. So you can't feel bad about just needing to be yourself because you're a human too, and you're a person who has things that they like. And you got to do those things. You've got to find some time to just be you so that if you can, because if you allow yourself to be you, then you can also be a really good caregiver. If you don't, and you feel that you never, it's not okay, you've got to always be there, you've got to do everything, and you don't delegate help sometimes, and you don't take a break sometimes, not only are you going to be tired, and even you may even develop resentment, and you don't really, that's normal. That's normal. But we don't have to go down that road. So the really thing is to be the best version of yourself is to figure out where can you take some time off so that you can actually be the person that's on call, because you are the one that's on call, but learning how to delegate and let go sometimes so that you can come back and be really good at it.
And this will be an entire new webinar that we'll have to do, but it's also, we talked a little bit to the audience before we went live about how people are living longer. And, as we age and we're in our 60s, we're taking care of aging parents who may have dementia. We also have children. We may be, in a relationship, and hopefully we have a couple friends. And so the balance is it's just constant, and it's a huge challenge. But I think what both of you said, at the end of the day, it's you that's juggling the balls. So if the juggler gets sick, the balls drop. And so I think it's really important that we continue to do that. But I can't thank you two enough. What a team, huh? From Cedars-Sinai. Thank you. And for our audience, remember, there's been a couple questions that everybody wants a copy of this, and we will be emailing you in the next few days a copy of the webinar to share with friends and family. And whenever you need to watch it and get a little encouragement or revisit the information, please do. But thank you. Have a nice evening on the East Coast. Stay cool on the West Coast. But thank you all for attending today. And thank you so much, Cedars-Sinai, Dr. Kremen, and Veronica. Thank you. Take care.
thank you.